So I'm going to briefly introduce Ovum, talk about cloud from a very, very high perspective, how it's evolving. Zoom in a little bit on what vendors and users are doing at the moment from an enterprise point of view. Looked at the trend from a public cloud as well as private cloud perspective, and then talk about this, what I think is a quite important trend, this, what I call the rise of the cloud ecosystem. So Ovum, we are based in London, but we are international in scope as well as capabilities. We are part of the Informa Group, which is used to be UK-based, now based in Switzerland for tax purposes, I'm afraid. It's about a 1 billion large conglomerate, and Ovum is about a $30 million company, about 400 people, 180 analysts. And I'm in charge of the cloud research for this company. So, cloud computing. Computing has evolved very quickly. It's still quite immature, but it's increasingly seen as an enabler. When you look at cloud computing, the term, you do a Google search, it shot back to fame in October 2007 as a result of an announcement by IBM and Google and a few US universities. And at the time, the cloud computing was a synonym for infrastructure as a service as well as platform as a service. In the next 2 years, it converged with an older trend, software as a service, which is about 8 years older than cloud computing. And the term cloud computing became synonymous with the notion of public cloud. So IT resources delivered as a service from an external third party. As a reaction to that, there was in the year 2010, 2011, the emergence of the concept of private cloud. And again, the same way there was a big debate as to whether or not software as a service was cloud computing. There was then a big debate as to whether or not private cloud was cloud computing. The debate has now been resolved, or is all called cloud computing. And then, as a reaction to this debate, public versus private, the emerging consensus is now around the notion of hybrid. To start with, hybrid was about public cloud connected to a private cloud, and now the notion of hybrid has ballooned to become a really as multifaceted as the notion of cloud computing itself. So you have hybrid cloud that encompass infrastructure service, platform service, software service all together. You have shared private cloud, which are not quite pure private. You have virtual private cloud, which are private cloud on top of the public cloud. And of course, you have shared virtual private clouds. You also have hybrid of traditional cloud services as well as more new cloud services as well as more traditional IT services, hosting, colocation, etc. And the latest wave of cloud-branded phrases are around these four notions. The notion of personal cloud, which is where the cloud becomes user experience centric. It's about integrating various cloud services, personal as well as professional services. Data cloud, this is where cloud computing intersect with big data. Cloud brokers, which is about aggregation, integration of cloud services, as well as cloud federation, whereby several cloud providers come together. Cloud is increasingly seen not as the end, but as a mean, as an enabler for other things, for applications, social application, mobile application, big data application, and from a business point of view, for new SME projects, new startups. These days, startups don't have a choice. They all start on a public cloud. But the power of the cloud is not just around the fact that it enables all these different things from a business point of view as well as from an application point of view, but how it allows these to cross-pollinate one another. You have the emergence of so-called SOLOMO, social, local, mobile application, which combine, based on cloud capabilities, social capabilities, social services, big data services, social media services, big data services, as well as mobile. capabilities. And you have the rise of marketplace, cloud brokers, supply chains, whereby several business come together to deliver or consume cloud. From a user and a vendor point of view, the main trends are the fact from a vendor point of view, more companies are providing more services. There is a slow industry convergence. We've been talking about IT convergence for about 10 years. It is happening, and it's cloud-centric. Hardware, IT services, software, and telecom companies are all converging on the same cloud space. It's taking time because it's an industry-level convergence. And because it's not just an industry transformation, it's also a business transformation for all of these companies, and they are feeling the pain of this transition. From a consumer point of view, they are, as one of the speakers mentioned earlier on, enterprises are using more and more clouds, private as well as publics. They are doing it slowly and mostly tactically rather than with a well-defined strategy, because it's kind of difficult. Cloud computing changes the way they relate to a lot of different things, and I've got slides about this later on. So just very briefly, a few data just for the telecom providers. Early 2010, there were 4 telcos providing 4 cloud services. Two years later, you have 39 telecom providers providing 66 services. So an explosion, both in terms of number of vendors as well as number of services. When I was saying that it's very difficult for all these vendors, it's not just me. Accenture, for example, did a really, and it's available online. You can download it for yourself. Did a really good report on the pain that the cloud service providers, the VMware, the IBM, the Microsoft of the world, as well as Accenture itself, are at the moment suffering because of this transition of the industry towards cloud computing. And it's a pain that they have at all levels: finance, marketing, management. Okay? So whilst the vendor are well in the middle of the business transformation, which is cloud-centric, the users have barely started moving from a more tactical view to an approach to cloud, which is about transformation of that business. Nevertheless, cloud computing is already impacting the way they relate to a lot of different things, the way they relate to IT assets, the way they deliver, consume, procure this asset, the way they relate to the IT vendors by shifting the risk, some of the risk to the vendor itself, the way they relate to the IT department. Cloud computing both undermine because of the public cloud, as well as enable IT department to do more. And also the way they relate to one another. Cloud computing democratize IT, so smaller companies have much more power in supply chain. Cloud computing enables supply chain sharing to be more easily implemented. In supply chain, it allows easier specialization and division of labor. So we've looked at the cloud computing overall trends, trends from a user as well as a provider point of view. Now, looking at public versus private cloud trends. For public cloud, still very fast growing. The adoption really depends on the context. It depends on a variety of different things. Nationality. At the moment, North America is by far the largest market, followed in terms of adoption growth by Asia-Pacific. Europe is quite sedate in comparison. It depends on the business type. The smaller you are, the fastest growing you are, the less regulated you are, the more likely you are to use a public cloud. It depends on the market. The more competition in the market, the more innovation in the market, the more likely the participants in this market are likely to use public cloud. It also depends on the background of the CIO. The younger the CIO, the more business-centric the CIO, the more open to public cloud use. And private cloud are moving from a kind of technical approach to a more user-centric approach. I have a slide on it later on. So just a few data for you. This year, public cloud, just public cloud, not private cloud. Enterprise public cloud and enterprise public cloud, not consumer, will be about 30 million, mostly software as a service, infrastructure service growing to be quite significant, and platform as a service lagging behind, going to grow from about 30 to double, about 666 billion in 2016. So a significant growth. But let's put that in context. Even in 2016, it will be less than 5% of the overall IT software and IT service market, okay? So one of the things I keep saying is that cloud computing is going to have an impact, is having a big impact, but it's a long-term trend. It's a 10-year to 15-year trend. When it comes to private cloud, there's a lot of different definitions. But basically, there are three approaches to private cloud. You have the bottom-up IT perspective, which is about, the private cloud is about virtualization, it's about automation, it's about consolidation, it's about kind of data center level things. And then you have the user perspective. It's more a top-down perspective. It's about user experience, user empowerment via things like portal, metering, chargeback, that kind of thing. Then you have another perspective, which is kind of more technology-centric. It's about buying the latest software, the latest hardware, in order to have them optimized for various workload, including cloud workload. And that perspective is shifting to a more design-centric perspective, whereby the private cloud is more about designing assets to be shared, to be standardized, to be accessed via API rather than just through a client, a graphical client. Then there's people looking at private cloud more as a short-term point of view. It's the private cloud is the part of the data center which is ahead of the rest. So it's the part of the data center with the updated software and hardware. Then there is a long-term view, which is about saying private cloud is a journey. It's about moving the data center from where we are now to a much more dynamic data center. And at the moment, the technology, IT, and short-term perspective is prevalent. And as the notion, the concept of private cloud matures, it will become much more long-term, user-centric and design-centric concept. I was looking at a few data from RightScale. RightScale, mid last year, produced a few figures based on actual usage. So this is not a survey, this is not an estimate, this is actual thing. So mid of last year, they were managing about 4 million infrastructure as a service virtual machines. And they were saying that about 2/3 of these virtual machines were in a setting which were multi-cloud setting. And most of this was a hybrid cloud, mix of public and private cloud. There were fewer people having multiple cloud. One thing I wanted to say is also people are increasingly sophisticated when they are as part of this multi-cloud usage. They're increasingly sophisticated in the way they manage workloads. A good example is the game industry. At the moment, game providers start on the public cloud. When their game becomes, and when and if their game becomes successful, they bring it back to their private cloud, and at the end of its life, the game moves back to the public cloud to die gracefully and catch up for the long tail of the market. So there's a kind of life cycle approach to the hybrid cloud when it comes to workloads. The last thing I wanted to talk about is this notion of the rise of the ecosystem. Too many people focus, when it comes to cloud computing, on IT assets. It's about delivering software, it's about delivering data, it's about delivering compute storage. That's not just that. A public cloud, especially in the case of public cloud are as much business platforms, ecosystem platforms, as they are technology delivery platform. They deliver services such as marketplace services, whereby people use the technology service to create new applications, sell these applications, and connect with customers. Business services, whereby they use what the cloud platform provide to manage their customers, to bill their customers, to get paid by their customers, as well as community services, whereby, for example, the customers provide reviews, a little bit like iTunes with Apple, but with, from an enterprise point of view, not a consumer point of view. And Salesforce was, with its App Exchange, was at the forefront of this notion of ecosystem services with marketplace service, community services, as well as business services. Amazon Web Services was very strong in business services, so enabling companies, startups, using the Amazon Web Service public cloud to bill their customer, manage the customer, get paid from the customer, and they have very recently moved to create a serious marketplace. And they also have marketplaces that relate to their services. They have a spot virtual machine marketplace whereby people bid for unused capacity so that in order to use Amazon Web Services at a lower price. They also have now a reserve instance marketplace whereby companies which have bought too much capacity at a lower price can now sell part of this capacity to third party. So it's becoming, the notion of marketplace is becoming much more flexible and multifaceted. Alongside that notion of marketplace, there's a notion of cloud federation which is rising. It's rising rather slowly. A UK-based company called OnApp has recently launched a federated CDN, Content Delivery Network service, whereby several cloud providers come together and to create a marketplace where they exchange CDN capacity. So it's a beginning of a kind of CDN federation service. There is the people like VMware, Microsoft, and also the people behind OpenStack are also talking about federation based on their technology. So VMware Technology Federation, OpenStack Technology Federation, Microsoft Azure Technology Federation, but it is still very early days. The technology is mostly there, it's just that the business model is not there. So the same way a mobile telecom operator allows you to roam to the US completely transparently, a cloud service provider at the moment doesn't allow you to roam from one cloud to another yet. And when it comes to complete roaming with the notion of intercloud, this is quite a few years ahead. One thing I wanted to say is that when the cloud emerged, people were saying, oh, this is going to be the death of the middleman. Well, the middleman is coming back with a vengeance. Channels are important to both large companies like Dell to access the small and medium business market, to access vertical market niches, as well as startups. Large distributors are also very keen to push their network of resellers to become more cloud savvy. And in the past 18 months, they have all launched cloud-centric initiatives. Computerlink did a survey at the end of 2011, and half of its network of resellers already had some cloud capability. And there's obviously this notion of cloud brokers emerging, whereby new companies integrate services. The integration is obviously technical, but from a cloud broker perspective, the challenge is as much to deliver the service as it is to empower the business transition of their users towards cloud computing. The last thing I wanted to say is that the rise of the cloud computing ecosystem is underpinned by an absolute explosion of API, and that's why I was talking about cross-pollination. It's where it's opened up the capability for developers to pick and choose various services and create new services on top of that. You can see a complete explosion of the number of APIs. In 2012, the number of API followed by website called Programmable Web, rise from 5,000 to 700 in the space of just 6 months. And you can see for yourself how it's risen. And what is important as well, back to the business model. Business model is the key issue when it comes to cloud computing at the moment. Not so much technology. Technology is still evolving, but business model are even less evolved than technology. And people are still trying to find their footings, trying different business models, different pricing models. The last thing I wanted to say is from a public sector point of view, the public sector is a very big participant in the cloud computing ecosystem. The emphasis of when it comes to public sector role has shifted from the public sector as a user with the notion of G-Cloud, government cloud, to public sector as a regulator. And at the moment, there's plenty of debate in the US and in Europe around things like privacy and taxation, to the public sector as an economy manager, and how to use cloud computing to boost economies, especially in Europe, where these days Europe is not in a particularly good state. And here is a few kind of a statement of objective that the European Commission published in October last year around generating lots and lots of jobs and lots of billions out of cloud computing. One last thing in terms, Ovum did a survey last year across several virtual market sector, and the key thing is that shared private cloud as well as hybrid cloud are apparently the way forward when it comes to this particular sector. So summary, we are extremely it's very, very early days. Cloud computing is barely an adolescent in terms of the user, the user ecosystem, the vendor ecosystem, the readiness of people to embrace cloud computing at business level, where contrasted with just firing a web browser and using your credit card. That's not what cloud computing is about. It's about really transforming the business, both business of the users as well as the vendors, to embrace this brave new world. And it will take a few years, about 10 years, for this brave new world to come to fruition. And that's it. Thank you very much.